Okay, so let's start off by and then I am also co-hosting. I am Evan.
Yeah, and we're two local Lake Travis residents, high schoolers, here to provide some variety entertainment.
And this is the first episode of our podcast, which we have titled The Travis Sound. So I think we can give ourselves a very light round of applause, for getting something started. So this first episode, we're going to be editing it a little bit for AVP, but we also have a YouTube channel. It's simply titled The Travis Sound, all words capitalized at the very beginning. So this being our first video, of course, we don't have anything else up, but we're planning on making this podcast, if we continue through with this podcast, a weekly thing that we do from now on, hopefully. So Raoult, you wanna chime in a little bit?
Okay, so what is the Travis Sound? Good question, Evan. So the Travis Sound is a variety show hosted by us, two Lago Vista high schoolers, and we're dedicated to providing our insight on local activities, probably discuss current events and issues that we face as not just high schoolers, but residents of the Travis area. And it's going to be a bit of a variety show, and I guess a bit of a news segment as well as we touch on current events.
Yeah, and what we intend to do at least is we plan on covering a large range of topics, but we're going to try to make our topics maybe like a weekly thing. So what is this week's topic, Raoult?
Well, today we're covering two topics and one viewer question. We're going to be talking about summer activities in the area, specifically concerts in Austin, and what we as two Lago Vista residents would like to do this summer. And we're also going to be talking about a recent walkout we had this past week in response to all of the violence, specifically the Parkland school shooting. And then we'll conclude with a viewer question and then a brief summary.
All right, that's a good overview, I feel. So because our show is going to cover a wide array of topics, different discussions that we may have, and we might discuss people that go to the school. I guess this is kind of a warning. We are going to tell a few stories about people from time to time. That's probably what's going to happen, when you have two people making conversation. But we will avoid using people's pronouns and using their names as to kind of protect their identity and not harass people or inadvertently have people harass them because they hear some stories. We will be using, in the future at least, maybe, hopefully not in this episode, be using strong language, profanity and such, and the concepts that we will be talking about and discussing could be a little touchy for some people, a few touchy subjects, like the whole walkout kind of brings up talk about guns and our opinions on guns and the Second Amendment and such. So, not everyone is going to agree with us or what we have to say, but, we're just trying to make some conversation, have people listen.
Yeah, just at least ask that, you listen, try to, I hope you find our conversations compelling at the very least.
Or maybe stupidly entertaining, or maybe even as just background noise.
Or you just find yourself through our insight. You become an elevated individual.
I don't think anyone's going to be elevated.
I can hope, Evan.
You can hope, sure.
Okay, anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's about it for the introduction. Just an advisory warning that in the future, at least, that we'll be using profanity and talking about some strong subject material and maybe a few people, but we'll protect people's identities and
try to keep it as civil as possible.
Yeah.
On to summer activities. Yeah. So for festivities, specifically pertaining to music, I've highlighted one concert for each month in summer, all of which are happening at the Austin 360 Amphitheater. In June, we have Post Malone, a local Austinite, and 21 Savage on June 16th. And if you're from the Austin or Travis area, I recommend you go support Post Malone.
On July, Willie Nelson and family are actually having this annual event, Willie Nelson's 4th of July annual picnic. It's going to include not only Willie Nelson and family, which is his musical group, but also several other country musicians that'll be attending. I can't think of them off the top of my head right now, but it's a very large variety of musicians all going to be attending at the Austin 360 Amphitheater, as Raoult had mentioned. It's on the 4th of July, obviously, because that's when the picnic is for.
And concluding summer in August, we have Imagine Dragons on August 2nd. And that's our array of concerts that you shouldn't miss this summer.
So, Raoult, just quick question. With June and August, why did you include Post Malone and Imagine Dragons? Are those some musicians or artists that you like to listen to?
Well, Post Malone, like I said, local Austinite, somebody we should, just support, being around the area.
Is he from Austin?
Yeah, I believe so. If not, he at least grew up, a large part in his life in the Austin / Texas area.
I never knew that.
Yeah, but his music is more on the side of rap, and it's the kind of rap I've gotten into recently. The reason I also included some artists and groups that seem of such variety is to provide more options for the viewers, I guess. I know, Keep Austin Weird, we have so many different perspectives, and I know me and you, we like Willie Nelson, but we're also open to other artists like Post Malone, and I just know Imagine Dragons is a big one that many people wouldn't want to miss.
Yeah. And the reason we highlighted some musical events that are happening in Austin is, as people who live in Travis County, not even an hour away from Austin, or at least that's what we assume our audience is going to be mostly comprised of, that Austin is one of the music capitals of the United States. At least that's what I would say. In my opinion, it is.
Yeah, for sure.
It's known for some very great musicians. Very talented people come out of Austin, and very talented people go into Austin because of all the opportunities it has for them.
Yeah, I guess that brings us to our next point as high schoolers, how to best utilize summer, specifically in the Austin area and in the local area.
Yeah.
So, Evan, what are some things you look forward to during the summer?
Well, me personally, I like to travel a lot. I like to go out and visit family because, my family is very valuable to me. And I can go on and on about that. But for summer here in Lago, I actually have a few things planned. I really want to utilize Lake Travis more because I feel like the older I've gotten, even though 17 is not necessarily that old, but it's older than, say, 12, I feel more and more appreciative of the lake we have. It's not even a block away from my home, and I can go to the lake. I have a kayak, I have fishing poles, I have, swimming trunks, whatever. I have so many things that I can do there, but I almost never go. I don't know why, because Lake Travis is a wonderful spot to be and to, do many activities there. So the lake is definitely a big thing. And you mentioned earlier today a concert that happens like Aquapalooza, right? Talk about Aquapalooza a little bit? Yeah, so for people who be interested in attending an event in the Lake Travis area, every year we have some event along the lines of a Lagopalooza, which is just an event that's hosted every year for different causes, usually some sort of charity or some person who's battling an illness. And around the time of 4th of July, everyone gathers up. There's a bunch of vendors. You can go enjoy great food by the lake, usually at Barcade Park, enjoy some live, free music, and just spend some time by the lake, go on your boat, chill out. Which, free music, that sounds pretty good to me. Yeah, and there's a lot of up-and-coming artists around here, most of which are attracted by Austin, like we said, so... Yeah, seriously, Austin is renowned for its music, the music it produces and the music it attracts. And besides the lake, how are you going to get to the lake, save through our 7+ parks in Lago, right? Is 7+? Yeah, so I guess the reason we brought up summer activities is to give you, our audience, maybe some of you aren't, natives to the area, some options. And like we said, we feel like it's best to utilize the lake
especially if you're a high schooler, like Evan brought up. Now that we've come of age, that we can obtain, say, a boating license, and we can
or a driver's license.
Yeah, and we can drive our own vehicles.
Drive your friends.
There's so many boats around. There's many services in which you can rent boats. Just make use of what you have nearby and utilize that lake. Go out in the summer with some friends. And if not, like we said, Austin is renowned for its music, art, and just wide array of culture, I guess.
Yeah. Austin it's a really special place.
Yeah, it's a bit of a melting pot when it comes to creativity and different cultural influences.
Which, there's plenty of things to do in Lago. As we mentioned already, there's Lagopalooza, there's the 7+ parks, there's the lake that you can go to. But if you ever want to get out of Lago, you could always just go to Austin yourself. I was actually discussing it earlier today with a few friends of mine, really good restaurants that we intended to go to, because I'm actually planning on going to a Fu Manchu concert in Austin. And so we were discussing where to eat, where to go, and we were realizing that we would love to do an independent day trip to Austin. Like, we have the means to do it. We all have cars. We can all carpool together. We could drive there, have some fun, spend a little money, and then come back home the same day, So Austin provides many different opportunities for people to go and explore and to just have a good time. And it doesn't even have to,
cost you a fortune.
Yeah, it doesn't have to cost you money to stay at a hotel or anything. You could just go out there one day, come back, and maybe if you really want to, or maybe there's some spots you didn't hit up, you could always go back there the next day. And I'm sure in the future of this podcast, we'll mention more things about Austin, especially with the summer coming up in like 4 more weeks.
Yeah.
4 more weeks. And so, again, also that time frame is one of the reasons we're discussing summer activities, because summer is so close, So it's fun to kind of just think about what you might be doing this summer. And if you're not really sure what you want to do this summer, or just don't have any plans, well, maybe listening to our podcast, you might start to generate some plans, hang out with some people.
Yeah, and like I said, if you're not from around the Travis area, you're just visiting, recently moved here, and you don't exactly know what to do in Austin, I just say, unless you want to pre-plan everything, of course, through online services, just go out to Austin and just make a day out of it. There's so many opportunities around. There's great food, usually live music in almost every one of these establishments, and just a bunch of art. Enjoy a day on the lake out there, too. Go kayaking. I've noticed that's a big thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, kayak fishing, too. Something I wanted to try my hand at,
Kayak fishing?
Yeah, kayak fishing.
Like with a fishing rod, or like?
Yeah, with a fishing rod. You mount the fishing rod. Okay, before I say anything about kayak fishing, I don't usually go fishing. I don't usually go kayaking. And I've never been kayak fishing. So, I have very limited experience or knowledge in that area, but the basic premise is you mount the fishing rod onto your kayak, you go out into the lake a little bit, and then once a fish takes the bait, then you just reel it into the kayak. It's a little tricky sometimes to keep your balance, but as long as you have a stable kayak, you shouldn't have a problem.
Yeah, and if you don't have, per se, a younger sibling who likes to mess around on the boat, I'd say it's not too difficult to keep it upright, but, be aware.
Raoult speaks from experience, sir.
Yeah, I guess I'm one of the few people who's been listening to Johnny Cash on a kayak through my younger sibling's phone whenever he decided to flip the kayak, and the lake took the phone with him. So, yeah, just be safe and have fun.
Yeah.
Do you want to move on to?
Yeah, I think it's probably best to move on from summer activities. I think we got it well handled. And if you don't hear anything on our, definitely check out our podcast first for this kind of stuff. But if you don't hear anything that sounds particularly good to you, then you can always look it up online, or you could just, as Raoult said, just go to Austin, get lost for a day, and then come back.
Lose
all the better for it.
yourself.
I mean, sure.
Lose yourself.
Yeah, you could put it like that, sure.
Okay, Evan, are you ready to move on to the next topic today?
I think so, sure.
Okay, our next topic number 2,
Oh.
is the school walkout.
All right, Raoul, I'm going to give you the floor on this one first. I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
About when did this happen again?
Yeah, let me give some context for the viewers. So in recent times, like many of you listeners know, we've had recent, how would you say, like increase in school shootings.
Very
in a very short span of time. And in response, last week, our school, like many other schools, held a walkout. And what we want to discuss today is a particular manner in how the walkout was held and how we feel overall and whether it was effective or not.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll describe. Okay.
Yeah.
So the walkout we had last week was on a B day. We have a block schedule here at Lago Vista High School. And the walkout was arranged partly by students and partly by staff. But I don't know which administrator decided this or if it was a coalition of them, but they had an allotted time between our homeroom period that extended a little past homeroom, but not like maybe 5-10 minutes, not that much.
Yeah, it started in the second period of the day, I remember.
Oh, yeah.
And then it rolled into advisory.
Yeah, which is homeroom.
Yeah.
And so what me and Evan would like to discuss is how the walkout wasn't much of a walkout on the grounds that it didn't disturb the school day at all, and that it was, for the most part, I'd say, controlled by the staff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like you have some things to say about it, though.
Yeah, so in our recent history classes, we've been talking about the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things our teacher outlined for us was to have a successful protest, nonviolent or violent. You have to disturb a process that's going on enough so that the authority at hand is not okay with it and has no, let me see, as long as it disturbs the authority, then it's something that will be taken note of. Because if it's not taken note of, the protest itself is kind of null because nothing will come of it. And so that's really why I'm against the walkout we had today. Not because school shootings are a good thing.
Oh, they're
they're a topic of the deepest sensitiveness, and it's something that we're 100% opposed to.
Yeah, naturally.
It's needless deaths. But to feel our voice heard as high schoolers and just as people in general, if we're going to stage some sort of protest, it needs to have an impact. It needs to be heard. It needs to not just be something filled into the schedule. What are your thoughts, Evan?
Well, of course, we gave our advisory warning at the very beginning. We're not going to name any names, name people or anything. But when in the class, in my English class, I don't know. Okay, this was just interesting to me. I thought this as soon as I noticed this. All the students that walked out of my class were female students. And I'm not quite sure why that is. I mean, there's many reasons for it, I'm sure. Be it psychological or
just closer ties to those who arranged it.
Maybe. Who knows? Yeah, a lot of the girls that, well, I mean, I said female students, so it's whatever, but a lot of the female students that left are pretty involved in school matters, So it makes sense that they would leave, but, it's just something I noticed, and I'm not quite sure what the reasoning for it is, but as they were leaving, there was a little bit of conversation about it. It's like, people are asking each other, "Are you going? I don't know if I'm going to go. Whatever. I'm just going to sit here, et cetera, et cetera." And some people, I forgot exactly who. I'm foggy on the details because this wasn't really important to me. I was trying to get some English work done, but some people were bringing up about the subject of guns naturally because this is about school shootings. This is a walkout. Because of the killings that use with guns as a catalyst, expedite situations. So, but a lot of, actually no, I'm not going to say a lot of, but a number of the female students that left the class were saying that this wasn't about guns, this was about school security and how to better school security. And now I'm kind of kicking myself in the head because I wish I went. So I not because it was necessarily important to me, but because, not that school security is important, but because I wish I were there in order to see what they were saying, or to listen to what they were saying.
Listen to the discussion.
Listen to their discussion. Like, what are you talking about with school security? Are you talking about maybe the possibility of hiring guards here, or you're probably talking about guns? But I don't know. I wasn't there. And I'm kind of regretting that I wasn't there, even though it wasn't that intriguing to me. But yeah, the walkout, it definitely seemed. It wasn't a disturbance, like Raoult was saying, that we were discussing in history about the civil rights movement. It wasn't a disturbance really at all, like that walkout could have never happened, and that school day would have felt exactly the same, I'm sure I've seen pictures when we were actually looking up different walkouts across the country. We saw all those pictures from Parkland. We saw hundreds of people that must have evacuated school, as well as parents of students, out in the field, holding up posters and signs with flowers and balloons, like, I guess maybe to commemorate people who were lost.
Yeah, and these people are being seen. Like, this is being televised, broadcasted all over the nation, while on the other hand, we kept it within a school gym, and I honestly didn't know the walkout was happening until the day of. And it's something I would have been in favor of, just to stand up if it was organized in another way that was more in the hands of the students.
Yeah, the whole situation with guns. Here's the thing. I was not raised around guns. My father even told me stories that when he knew that I was going to be born, he got rid of his one and only gun, which was just a pistol. Never shot guns before until about 2015, my first trip to Wisconsin. I got to shoot some shotguns, and then the next year I got to shoot some handguns, Not even for that long, but like, I honestly prefer bows myself. But when it comes to guns, I don't really have a strong attachment to guns, But what I do care about is federal overreach. I have to admit, I get very suspicious of the federal government.
Yeah, but I feel like that's something, we should stay cautious, but not to a point where it's paranoia.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's really paranoia with me, but I definitely...
You're hesitant.
As soon as I hear talk of taking people's guns away, or, putting forth legislation that dictates what people's vocabulary is like, especially with the gender pronoun stuff, especially in Canada, for sure. But we're not going to get into that because we're discussing
Travis.
We're discussing, yeah. But like you see when the federal government is overstepping its boundaries sometimes, or when it's thinking about it, or when people are advocating for that to happen. So when I hear take all the guns away, which I know certain people are going to say, oh, it's not about taking all the guns away. Well, there's people out there who do want that, so you have to factor that. I don't care about guns, but I'm still hesitant when I hear that,
To take away guns? Like entirely?
Yeah, and I am all for increased gun regulation, like how easy it is to purchase guns, much more thorough background checks, perhaps even like mandatory federal classes, like how when you obtain a driver's license, perhaps a similar structure could be applied to obtaining a firearm, because think about it. Okay, so cars, vehicles, very dangerous, that's why we have regulations in place in order for people to be able to learn and be more responsible with this very dangerous thing. But just because it's dangerous doesn't mean that it's not beneficial. Cars are used for transportation. They're used to take people from point A to point B. Guns aren't exactly like cars, not by any means. But how they are similar is that they're both very dangerous implements, very dangerous tools that people can use. So I'm all for, maybe like getting gun permits, gun laws increased, but I don't think I could ever say that I was totally for removing all guns, because they'll still be in circulation. Criminals will still obtain guns, and people can still do horrible things because they'll still be able to get guns. But that's my take on it, at least.
Okay, yeah. So to clarify what I believe the stances me and Evan share, and a stance that I feel both sides of the pro-gun, anti-gun conversation can agree on, is that we believe there at least needs to be an increased regulation in how guns are integrated into society, whether it be through more thorough background checks. An interesting thing I heard was Elon Musk proposing that guns be barcoded, I guess would be the word, in order so guns could be traced back to the individual owner.
That's a interesting idea.
Yeah, but like we said, it seems that there's always bad people out there, and we're not saying that we don't want to stop all of them, because some people are always going to try to find a way, but we at least want to diminish that chance, that possibility of happening.
If you are interested in more talk about guns, gun regulations, the whole debate, we're high school students. We have a limited scope on the world because, we've lived in Travis County for pretty much...
The majority of our lives.
The majority of our lives, definitely. For me, pretty much all of my life. But if you are interested, just, you could do your research but on the internet and such. But a source I would point you to, there's this YouTube channel called Jubilee. It's spelled Jubilee. By the way, there's no way we're sponsored by anybody, so I'm sure that wasn't a concern of yours, but I don't know, put it out there. So this channel, Jubilee, it covers a very wide array of topics, but there's this mini-series that it does called Both Sides. I think that's what it's called. You look up Jubilee and you look up Both Sides, you'll definitely find it, even if that's not what it's technically called. But what they do is the people at Jubilee actually get a sample size of people together, maybe 4 or 5 individuals on both sides, and there'll be like pro-abortion, anti-abortion, vegetarian versus meat eater, atheist versus Christian, whatever. They have them all stand on separate sides of the room. They'll say statements, and if either any of the individuals on either side agree with those statements, they come in, they talk about their viewpoint, and then those that didn't agree come in after they've said something and they discuss with them. So there was an episode on pro-gun versus anti-gun, and I highly recommend these videos because not only do they kind of increase my faith in humanity, I guess you could say, that they're very feel-good videos a lot of the time, even when they're talking about really bad things, because people start to realize there's a lot more common ground between us than you would think. But I highly recommend that video series, and if you're interested in more conversation about guns, pro, anti, otherwise, whatever, I highly recommend Jubilee.
And Evan, just for myself and other viewers who aren't familiar with that YouTube channel, are the people discussing these questions experts or just everyday average people?
From what I can ascertain, they probably just average people. I think they're not experts. What they try to do rather is they take their normal people, taking other normal people into the same room, and they provide statements so people can talk. Like an example of a statement could be like, I believe that I need guns to protect me from bodily harm, etc. So the anti-gun people probably aren't going to walk up and talk about it, but the pro-gun people will, So it's just general statements, and then they come in and they discuss and they find out there's a lot more in common between each other. Really, we're all just scared, and at least when it comes in life, people are just scared and anxious. And specifically when it comes to guns, the reason people are pro-gun is because they want to protect their rights, or they want to protect themselves or their family from harm. They want to protect what they have, what they've worked to achieve. Anti-gun people also want to protect themselves and protect their families, except, but the pro-gun think that they need a gun to be able to do this. And the anti-gun think there should be absolutely no guns, and that's the only way, So, that's the only difference. But otherwise, people work on a very similar, in very similar patterns and in very similar ways with very similar motivations. It's just how that manifests can be very different.
Okay. Unless you have anything else to add, Evan, would you like to go on to the audience question?
No, I have nothing else to add about this topic.
Should I say his name of the viewer?
Don't say his name. Oh, we shouldn't use the pronouns anyway, but it's not like you're ever going to figure out who this is, so whatever. But we'll try to be more safe about that.
So, our question for this segment is, what are your goals for this podcast? Evan, would you like me to take the floor first?
Yes.
Okay, so for me, this podcast is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and it's just a forum for me to discuss these questions that are a bit more complex with somebody who's my friend, and I believe would bring up a lot of good points in which we could both benefit and learn from the overall experience. I guess another reason would be that I haven't been exposed to many news outlets or podcasts around the Travis area specifically, and I feel like it's something that we could help out the community and local high schoolers with by providing our takes on current issues and upcoming events.
So my goals with this podcast, at least, I will be the first to admit I don't really watch that many podcasts. The only podcast I have ever watched consistently have to be the H3 podcast, which that was kind of a jumping point for me to start listening to other, podcasts. Like, I only occasionally listen to like 2 or 3 of them, But I like the idea of podcasts, and my experiences with them have been pretty positive because I hear things that I may not otherwise hear, and it's led me to some interesting individuals, on the internet, sure, but it's led me to some different viewpoints, and it's interesting. So I guess what I want to get out of this podcast and what I want this podcast to do is I want it to spread around our school. I want people to be able to listen to what we have to say, or just use us as white noise, whatever. But I like the idea of sparking discussion. I like the fact that we're here in the studio together and we're having a discussion. I feel even though we both have kind of limited life experience, and I don't necessarily mean with just like being a functioning member of society, but just like going out and doing things, we're limited a little bit. I feel like this podcast will definitely reveal to people who may also feel the same way that they have things that they want to discuss, or they have things that they want to do, or there's an underlying motivation for them to go out and do those things, So, I'm kind of talking about everything and nothing at the same time here, but I guess the gist of it is what I want this podcast to do is to be a source of entertainment, a jumping point to maybe some more experienced individuals, lead to some other sources, kind of like other podcasts have done for me, and just kind of be an outlet for us to utilize our creative and technical skills to make something that hopefully people will enjoy, So I sincerely hope that this podcast continues. I hope it's a weekly thing. We get to discuss various topics. And I really like that point you brought up about, helping out the community. Because even though it may not really seem like we're doing much to help the community, it may be something if even just one high school student shows up to an event they may not have otherwise showed up to, Or maybe we can improve people's lives by getting them interested in actually going out and experiencing something rather than sitting at home and kind of rotting away, which, sitting at home is wonderful, but you got to get out there and do something every once in a while, which is something I aim to do and something I hope this podcast helps people with. So that's my spiel, at least.
Okay.
By the way, thank you to the person who asked us this question. Yeah.
And before we move on, adding on to your thoughts on how this was a medium in which we could express our creativity. I know this episode, being that it's a bit of a pilot, was a little bit more on the formatted side, but in the future I think we're going to vary from very funny personal experiences. It just so happened this week wasn't anything too funny to talk about, while also touching on deeper subjects like the school walkout and other issues going around. So let's head on to the summary.
Yeah.
So
I feel like this pilot episode definitely can use a good summary right now.
Okay. So first off, we kicked off with what the Travis Sound is and who we are. The Travis Sound is a podcast hosted by me, Raoult, and my partner, Evan, with the aim of reaching out to locals in the area with activities on what to do, while also offering our take on current issues and larger conversations going on. And we aim to have the podcast on a weekly basis, and just hope to get our thoughts out there. On to summer activities, our first topic. For music, we have highlighted one event per month this summer, the first of which being Post Malone on June 16th, alongside 21 Savage. Then in July, we have Willie Nelson and Family on the 4th of July. Don't miss it. And
seriously, Willie Nelson puts on a hell of a show.
Are you speaking from experience, Evan?
Yes. I've only ever been to one Willie Nelson concert, and it was enough to get me into live music forever, I think.
Okay. And concluding summer with Imagine Dragons on August 2nd, and all of the aforementioned groups are performing at the Austin 360 Amphitheater. And
when Raoul says we limited the musicians that we mentioned to, one per month, he's not kidding either. Austin pretty much is playing music at any given hour of the day or night. There's always something to do in Austin, especially music-wise. So, definitely look into music stuff in Austin if you're not interested in any of these shows, or even if you are interested, find some more music, go support some musicians, especially the local musicians, because they could probably use the money, Okay,
and on to activities. Our key points were to utilize a lake in Austin. Like we said, Austin is full of rich art, culture, food, music. And like we said, you don't have to go in with a plan. Just take a day trip with family and or friends and just make a day out of it. Have fun, enjoy yourself. And if you don't want to head out of town, just stick to one of what I believe are 7 parks. Yeah. Utilize the lake, be safe, have fun, attend some local events such as Lagapalooza, and just make the most of what we have in the area.
Seriously, it's amazing when you put your mind to it, how much you can get out of the stuff you already have, Just, something that I think, I don't know, something that just popped into my mind. And that's something the show, I think, is going to become whenever we hit our stride. If we get to the episode where we do, in fact, do that, where we become less rigid structure and more about just natural conversation,
Yeah, and mold the structure to what we decide to talk about that day.
Go ahead.
And our second topic today was the school walkout we had the past week in response to the recent shootings. And our stance on it was we are completely against the needless deaths, but we believe that there at least needs to be greater regulation on guns. Not to say that we should entirely remove them away through some form of government legislature.
Yeah, and also just realize, no matter how heated any discussion gets on any given topic, we're all human and we're all just trying to make it through life, So So just something to keep in mind, I guess, when you're discussing anything with anybody.
Okay, and we concluded with our audience question, which for this episode was, what are your goals for this podcast? And for me, my goals were to let my voice be heard, give some news to the local area, which I believe we're lacking, and open the floor for conversation, and just put our thoughts out there and hopefully bring the community together, at least a little bit more. And Evan, if you'd like to summarize your points.
Your goals seem a little bit more noble than mine. I think ultimately what I want to do in this podcast is get to the point where I can just let my words kind of spill into the microphone. Maybe a little bit more carefully than spill. Maybe a little bit siphoned.
Regulated flow.
Fact checked maybe a little bit. But definitely bring levity to the school, because I feel like it could use it. I think anything can use a little bit of levity. Bring some information to the school, and really just kind of get my own thoughts and feelings out in maybe a more constructive way than just sitting at home and doing nothing. Maybe this podcast will inspire me to go out and do something as well as inspire other people. So maybe a little bit selfish, but I feel like this podcast is a good thing, not only for the two of us doing it, but, for whatever audience we cultivate along the way.
And on a closing note, me and Evan are both creative individuals, and we'd like to improve on what we have so far. So please, if you want to be chosen for the audience question, or you have any suggestions for the show, they can contact us through our email.
Yeah. We might, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think what we might also try to do, probably advertise ourselves a little bit, not a merch line or anything, but just like put out some flyers, here or there, try to get, hopefully we can hit a schedule that we can follow consistently, like maybe every Friday we can just sit in here and talk, edit the episode on Saturday, and then release it Monday,
Yeah.
Or maybe Sunday, so people come to school maybe with it on their minds if they do indeed watch it. So hopefully we get a set schedule put in place. We're going to try to put up some flyers. Maybe I think we can start a QR code.
Yeah.
So if you have any suggestions to improve the show, or if you want to be a part of the audience questions for our podcast, we'll try to put up QR codes, but this is definitely, as Raoult said, this is a pilot episode for sure. So if anybody is interested, we're going to continue regardless if people are interested, but hopefully people become interested along the way because
something we enjoy doing.
It's less fun when nobody's listening, but
yeah. And would you like me to disclose the email, Evan? Or would we just want to do the QR?
Let's talk about the YouTube channel, which I mentioned, and also our email. Probably.
So if you don't go to our school, Lago Vista High School, and you don't have access to, say, the QR codes,
and we can also probably whenever we make the video, we could probably put a link or something
to the
email.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you're watching this podcast through YouTube. Our channel is The Travis Sound, capital first letter for each word. And you can probably click the link in the description for the email. If not, if you want to type it up, it's thetravissound@gmail.com, thetravissound@gmail.com. And I think that's all we have for this episode, Evan.
Yeah, we're all out of material, but that's the first... actually, no, we're not out of material. We could go on and on and on, but that would just be boring and droning to y'all, so... As far as we all know, end of the first episode. So I think that deserves... We started this episode with a little bit of applause. I think we should end it. Yeah, just a little... Don't want it to peak on the mic, so we're clapping pretty soft.
Oh no, Evan, the outro music.
Oh, yeah. Oh, great.